Now, there are a lot of things we can discuss from this weekend of Mets baseball as they drop another series to the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the main takeaway from me is in the eighth inning, Buck Showalter showed his hand. He hates Mark Vientos, and he is proving to be a real issue with this Mets team getting any momentum this season.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter, Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, I know that there's a lot of jumping off points I could have chosen for the show today. And I'm focusing on one at bat where honestly, anything could have happened. But what Buck Showalter did at the end of this game, to me, was the most clear instance I've ever witnessed in my life of a manager showing his hand against a player. And yes, Buck Showalter will give you the rationale. He's going to go to the media. I don't have to wait because this is fresh off the game. I got a fresh Mets migraine. I've had them a lot lately. My head's splitting. I'm frustrated, like all of you are, watching or listening to this as Mets fans. And I know they're going to ask him, why? In a one-run game, would you pinch hit Guillorme for Vientos? Why would you do that? Why would you pull a guy out of the game who with one swing of the bat could tie it? Okay? If you just roll out a simulator 100 times, how did the Mets score a run in that inning? Now, Buck Showalter's going to say, look, I felt like the probability of Guillorme getting on first and then Brandon Nimmo in the front of the lineup driving him in was more likely than one swing of the bat from Mark Vientos. That's a Mets lineup that had 3 hits today. That's a Mets lineup that had 2 walks. You're confident in that lineup coming through and getting the requisite bases to drive Guillorme in to hit a double, to drive him in from first if he draws a walk or gets a base hit? How about you roll that dice 100 times and find out that, I don't know, even if Vientos is struggling, which granted, he has been, even if there's a 5% chance that Mark Vientos runs into one, it's a lot better than the odds of everything else breaking for you. Because guess what? Mark Vientos, like Guillorme, could draw that walk. He could get that base hit. But he also has a much better chance of hitting one out of the ballpark. Guillorme's not going to do that. It's a one-run game. If you're down 3, okay. Okay, I get it. And look, the mismanagement of Mark Vientos is not why the Mets are in the position they're in. I'm not blaming the entire season on Mark Vientos not getting run. But it's a stubborn manager who I am starting to lose faith in being able to push the right buttons. Because it feels like he has no pulse of this team. And what has happened with Mark Vientos is you called up a kid who was red hot in AAA, who has more AAA experience than any of your top prospects, who, if managed properly, if given that red carpet that we see so many teams give their top prospects when they call them up, given an opportunity to take a hot streak, take the way you see in the baseball in triple, and translate it, maybe he would have had success. Maybe. But you didn't even give him a shot. You rolled an automatic out there and Daniel Vogelbach for a while. You let him sit on the bench, and then finally, when he has a chance to get some playing time, when Pete Alonso gets hit in the wrist, this poor kid puts on his helmet. He's ready to run for him. He's ready to get into the game and play first base because clearly he thinks he's the backup first baseman on this team. And Mark Canha goes out. And I'll tell you what, in all honesty, right now, the best version of the Mets probably does have Mark Canha at first base and has Tommy Pham in left field every day. That is probably the best version of this New York Mets team. But you have Mark Vientos, who has that ignite ability to him. Remember, I told you in the past, if you go by home runs per plate appearance, this guy in the minor leagues homered more frequently than any of the top prospects the Mets have. That includes Francisco Alvarez, that includes Brett Baty, and that includes Roddy Mauricio. Now, is that to say that Mark Vientos is going to be the best hitter of those four in the big leagues? No, because clearly Francisco Alvarez is proving to be that dude. He's unbelievable. But even with Alvarez, he had to fight tooth and nail the start of his tenure to get at bats over Tomas Nido. And now, to Buck's credit, whether it's his decision or the front offices, they're running Baty and Alvarez out there every day. And in this series, you saw a lot of Vientos. And it's not like he did a ton to wow you, but you know what? Here's a guy that had an opportunity for a moment that was probably playing the field in the bottom of the seventh. No, he's leading off in a one-run game, excited to get to the dugout so he can go back into there and have a chance to rewrite the narrative of his season with one swing of the bat and tie the game and inject that life into your ball club. And you send Guillorme out there, and guess what makes matters worse than all this? Guillorme gets called out on an automatic strike, which honestly was like the perfect karmic response from the universe. That you have the wrong guy up and he's not ready. And everyone knows that I'm a big Guillorme fan. But in that moment, it just wasn't the spot for him. And of course, he does what you can't do at any point in the game, but particularly at a point in the game where there's two strikes and it's late in the ball game and every out matters that much, where he just doesn't even pick his head up to be ready for the pitch. And you know who has probably more experience with the pitch clock than anybody on this roster? I don't know, maybe the guy who's in minor leagues with it, Mark Vientos. I'll tell you one thing that Mark Vientos would not have done in that spot: strike out automatically. A lot happened in this game. I already said it. The Mets had 3 hits, okay? It's not like this is the only reason that they lost. But it is a microcosm of the season, of a manager who has mismanaged the best thing that this team has had going for it, in my opinion. Or the best, not the best thing they've had going for them, because the rookies are still a long way away from really turning this season around. But I'll tell you one thing, Francisco Alvarez has been the best story. And if this team's going to go on a run, it's going to come a lot down to Alvarez keeping it up, Baty figuring it out, and maybe it's now the next rookie up, because apparently Ron Mauricio could be on his way. But how can you feel any confidence that Buck Showalter's even going to play him? We'll talk about that, and I will give you a little bit better of an overview of what happened throughout this series in just a minute. Before we do, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your item to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions apply. The New York Mets play the New York Yankees, 7:10 Eastern Time, Tuesday night. Catch every pitch of the Mets' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Now, taking you back to square one of this series, Friday night, Tyler McGill got roughed up bad. 9 runs, 7 of them earned off 8 hits, 3 walks, 1 strikeout. There was times this season when Tyler McGill was a pitcher that was finding success. But throughout all of that early success, and it was just pitching to an ERA in the fours, but it was, hey, he's healthy. He's giving you 5 innings a lot of times. Great. I always pointed to the high walks, the low strikeouts, the fact that all of the expected metrics were telling us that this was coming. I don't know if you heard that bell in the background. It was my dryer, or it should have been the end of Tyler McGill's tenure with the New York Mets this season, or at least for now. He's been bad, okay? And look, we now have 200 innings exactly of sample size of this guy's big league career, 4.86 ERA. I don't know if he's ever going to be this great starting pitcher. I think ultimately he's a guy that probably needs to learn how to pitch that long man role. And if he can become Trevor Williams of last year for this Mets team, that is great. But he's not striking out anybody. He's just a pitch to contact guy and hope it works out for you. And the walks have been bad. And he's got a whip this year of 1.70. It's been disastrous for Tyler McGill this season. And, he just flatly lost you a game. And if you look at his, last 4 starts, 3 of them he's given up at least 4 earned. And this one, it was 7. And he's given up 8 hits this one. The last time out, it was 5 1/3, 5 walks, 5 hits, somehow gave up just a run. Time before that, Colorado, 4 innings, 10 hits, 6 runs, 4 earned. Here's the crazy thing. I actually want to do the math on this. He had 5 unearned runs in May, and he has 2 this month. So you could theoretically, now granted, those are unearned for a reason, but it could be even worse. As far as what's happening on the hill in days where McGill is pitching, there could be 7 runs added to the ledger. If he just called it a run average, it's probably a run average over 6 when he's out there. So for every 9 innings he's pitching on the mound, whether it's because the defense plays bad behind him or just because there's so much contact in play that these things happen, he's in a position, or the Mets are in a position, where you're giving up 6 runs per 9 innings. Probably more than that. I didn't do the exact math in front of me. I mean, how many earned runs has he allowed? He's allowed on the season, looking at 36. So if you add 7, I mean, look, again, it's not to say that those all should count, but the bottom line is he's been a disaster. And the Mets have 2 days off, and it sounds like they might look to go with an extra reliever and skip a guy in the rotation. I imagine McGill's the guy, and you're hoping that Quintana can be back at some point in July. In the meantime, I don't know. I guess you give Joe Lucchesi another crack at it when that time comes around, but the Mets won't theoretically need that starter until the 20th of June. So it gives you a couple turns here to just go with what's working. And look, what's working and what worked in this series is, to a lesser extent, Carlos Carrasco, but I thought he threw the ball pretty well today. And really, Kodai Senga. I mean, Kodai Senga, the one saving grace of this series, the only saving grace of the last 9 games the Mets have played to get a victory here. 7 innings pitched, 2 hits allowed, 1 run, also an unearned run, 4 walks, 6 strikeouts. Great defense play behind him by Brandon Nimmo. And the Mets were able to win one on Saturday to make this series just not a complete loss. You had a big day from Mark Canha, a couple RBI hits, 3 RBIs for him. Tommy Pham, 2 for 4, scored a couple of runs. You had Brandon Nimmo driving the first run of the game. He went 2 for 4. Francisco Alvarez hit another homer, his 12th of the year, which is right up there. I think it's tied. Salvador Perez and somebody else for the most home runs hit by a catcher this season. So he's been remarkable and has been the best story of the season. But that's really kind of the only positive game and positive impact players you can discuss. I mean, Pham's been good. Canha has started to really turn it around a little bit. And Senga was great in this start. And then, you fast forward to Sunday and you get a 4 2/3 from Carlos Carrasco, where he gave up 6 hits and 3 walks, but only 2 earned runs. It was Josh Walker that came in and got a big out. to bail Carrasco out of further damage. And Josh Walker looks good. So that's another little positive I could take from this series is they seem to have another left-handed reliever, guy that had really good numbers in Syracuse, a sub-2 ERA, had a lot of strikeouts, who throws pretty hard from the left side, regularly touching 95. So I like Walker as a new arm in this bullpen. Maybe that pays off big dividends in the coming days and hopefully weeks. But the bottom line from this series was this free fall has continued, and I don't know what identity this team has to find, but you're heading towards a Subway Series where it's no Alonso, no Judge, and I think that is the overarching theme of where these clubs are at. It's trying to find a way to get by without their best, hitters in the middle of the lineup, their best sources of offense. And apparently Ronnie Mauricio might be the guy they're going to call on to get a little bump if you trust Carlos Borrega, who has broken stories in the past. So I want to discuss that and a little more on Buck Showalter, how it all ties together. So we'll get to that in a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. The New York Mets set to play the New York Yankees 7:10 Eastern Time Tuesday night. If you want to catch every pitch in the Mets hometown broadcast, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Ronnie Mauricio is heading up for the Subway Series, according to Carlos Borrega, who has broken stories in the past. It might be real. And Mauricio was not in the lineup on Sunday, which just feeds into that a little bit more. There had been talk recently about putting more tools in the toolkit for Mauricio, getting him some run in the outfield, played a lot of second base. So you imagine if he gets called up, that's the natural home for him. And then, we'll see what that means for Jeff McNeil. Is he going to be playing right field in lieu of playing Starling Marte a little bit, who has been better as of late, but you never know there. Is he playing left? Is he taking playing time away from Tommy Pham? That's where I get concerned, because here's the thing. If you want to be honest about the guys that have been given the best at bats over the past couple of weeks, now that Alonso's out of available options, it's been Francisco Alvarez and Tommy Pham. And yes, I know all of you are ready to jump down my throats about this. I've seen some tweets already. Tommy Pham jersey probably going to have to be purchased pretty soon here. I'll give myself until the All-Star break. Let this marinate a little bit longer. I'm rooting for Tommy to keep it up. I believe I said that he wouldn't have an OPS over 700 or 750. You can check the tape, and I will at some point if I can find that episode. But it's over 800 last I checked. So I was wrong on that one. Very similar to in 2021 when I was wrong about Jonathan VR. Here's the problem. If Jonathan VR or Tommy Pham is one of the best hitters in your lineup, your team is probably not going anywhere as the 2021 Mets did. And unfortunately, where the New York Mets are heading in 2023. But still, the way he's playing, you can't take his bat out of the lineup. I guess where playing time can be had here is Mark Canha could still be your starting first baseman. If you want to give him a day at some point, I don't know. It just depends on who gets sent down for Ronnie Mauricio. The thing about it too, though, is if this was the decision you were going to make, why didn't you make it when Pete Alonso went down 3 or 4 days ago? Because you could have, and you went to Guillorme. So you used an option on Guillorme, brought him back. Now you're going to bring up another infielder that's taking playing time. This gets back to the Billy Epler of it all and whether he's making the right decisions for this Mets team. But I digress on that one. If the solution is still having Guillorme on this roster, well, now you have a new backup shortstop if Mauricio were to come up. So again, it doesn't make sense. But hey, let's just say it's not just Guillorme. I don't even know if it's even have any more options. Let me check this really quick. Did they just burn his last option? Because, ideally, I think for the best fit on the roster, you'd probably just, according to Fangraphs, he still has one more. So maybe that's it. It's a quick hook on a Guillorme, Mauricio comes up, which would, again, be bad roster management. If that's not it, and again, this is all based on a report by Carlos Borrega. So maybe Mauricio's just staying in triple and that never happens. But again, operating under that belief, If it's not Guillorme, who is it? Is it Mark Vientos going down? All right, let's play that one out. If Vientos is down, who's your backup first baseman? Eduardo Escobar, maybe? Daniel Vogelback, who's still on this roster? I don't know. Okay. If that's not the option, if Vogelback is finally DFA'd for Ronnie Mauricio, how are you juggling playing time? Is Vientos just the right-handed bat at the bench? What's Eduardo Escobar's role then? Is he the everyday DH? Okay, we'll play that one out. He's the everyday DH. You got Mauricio, you'd hope, starting in second. McNeil's in the outfield. Where's Pham playing? Where's Canna playing? Where's Marte playing? So I honestly wouldn't call Mauricio right now if it was up to me, because I don't think he's going to play. And then you're in the same position where Ronnie Mauricio is just another rookie that Buck isn't playing. Ideally, you just clean house and just completely reshape the roster for it to make sense. But I don't know. Here's the one thing that could make sense that would work. And I'll leave on this note. If you were to flip Mauricio for Vientos and be committed to playing Ronnie Mauricio every day, and then you just steal time by juggling Escobar and Canna at first, I guess Vogelback a little bit if you wanted to, but probably more likely at DH. You get Pham some time at DH too. You mix and match with Jeff McNeil playing a lot of left. It can work. It can work. But the thing I don't want to see happen is you call up Mauricio, you option Vientos, you play Guillorme over Mauricio consistently, you play Escobar over Mauricio at second base consistently, and it's just another kid that Buck is wasting on the bench. So we'll see. We'll see how the playing time shakes out. We'll see if the Mets even make that call. Right now, I think that the guys that shouldn't be taken out of this lineup for the most part, it's Tommy Pham, it's Francisco Alvarez, it's Brandon Nimmo, it's Jeff McNeil, it's Francisco Lindor, and Brett Beatty. That's 6. And Alvarez, if I didn't mention him. And then it's a matter of, with those other couple spots, Canna, I think, should get a lot of run as well, but it's finding time for everyone else that's on the roster. And I just don't know if Buck's the guy right now. But he has to be, because I don't think this is a Mets team that's going to fire him. That's why I didn't do it. Hey, let's fire Buck Showalter episode, because it's just not realistic. Regardless, that's going to be all for me today. On tomorrow's show, little exciting news to discuss. David Stearns could be the president of baseball operations for the Mets next year. That could save everything. I am seriously hype on that one. So for all you everydayers, make sure you check out the show tomorrow. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. Follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Mets. If you want to catch every pitch of the Mets hometown broadcast on Tuesday night at 7:10 Eastern time, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets.